Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. We are just a few episodes away from ending season 4, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you want to be a part of the Patreon community, make sure you go to patreon.com/Melinda Hale. Today, joining me on the show is entrepreneur, social media influencer, and the founder and CEO of the Spark School, which is an online learning community for impact-driven content creators, influencers, and entrepreneurs, and a school that I am a graduate of, Miss Gwen Lane. Gwen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I am such a fan of you.
Oh, you're the sweetest. Well, I've learned so much from you, so I can attribute any kind of growth that I've had in the last couple of years definitely to you helping. I've learned so much from you, so I'm really grateful for your presence in my life.
I love hearing that. It never gets old. And we were just talking earlier about your daughter being an Aries and me being an Aries.
Yeah.
Like, we love to hear it, so keep them coming.
I love it. Well, I want to talk a little bit about just your career path because, I've known you for a few years. I've loved seeing how much you've grown. And of course, it's inspired me to continue, with my brand and everything that I'm doing. But let's just go back to the beginning and how you knew that getting into this line of work was what you wanted to do.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a thing where I woke up one day and I was like, I'm going to be an influencer. That never really existed back then when I was just starting to figure out what I wanted my business to be. So backtrack to after college, I went to work in an ad agency in LA. I'm originally from LA, and I kind of knew that was the path, right? You go to school, you get a job, you pay your bills, you somehow like your life, and then you die. And so I was like, wait, is that it? Is that
right.
it? And being in the entertainment industry, it was super fun. I was super grateful to have a job. I got a lot of experience. I worked with some of the major studios out there, got tons of experience, met a lot of people, but there was always that kind of nagging feeling of, what is my purpose and what am I supposed to do? And I kind of knew it was bigger than, trying to figure out which billboards I wanted to buy for our client for their movie premieres. And so
Right.
I was like, what is that thing? And I just started with asking questions. I think as someone who's gotten to practice yoga and meditation for most of my life, I knew that there was something there, but it was something that I wasn't really sure of yet. And so I feel like a lot of people can relate to that question of like, what am I doing here? If it's that time where you're like, okay, I did all the things that I think I'm quote unquote supposed to do. And what am I supposed to do now? And is this my life?
Right.
So
especially if you're in your 20s,
Yes.
It's like that's the time that you start questioning everything.
Yes, I'm sitting in my cubicle and I get all this free swag and invited to these awesome LA parties. And I was like, but is this it? Like, was this all of that is? And so I started giving myself the freedom to kind of explore what that meant for me. What did I like to do? And I kind of went back to the things that I love to do. I love to write. I love to go to events. I'm an extrovert, so I love meeting people. And so I just started going to events. And then I started the LA Girl, which is my blog, my travel and lifestyle blog that kind of started this whole trajectory for me. And it was just a creative outlet at that time while I was working. And then I realized, okay, there's this whole blogger world and out there that there was working with brands, getting money through affiliate marketing. And I started doing some more research and seeing like a lot of the mommy bloggers, it was their blog and they had a whole brand. They would have a product line. And that was kind of like the start of their empire, was building an audience in the community. And I stumbled into influencer marketing. And as I started to gain traction with my blog, my Twitter, which was where I started before the rise of Instagram, I just started getting connected and I started giving myself the freedom to explore what would happen and the opportunities that just came along with building a community and audience in LA. And through all of this, I changed different jobs, worked at different places, and I was able to start teaching at YouTube and start creating these workshops for content creators because they wanted to learn how to monetize outside of AdSense, which, you get paid for the views when people watch commercials on YouTube. That's kind of how they make money. And then they were also looking for other ways to monetize. And when they found out that I had my own personal brand and was starting to work with really big brands out there, they started to ask me to teach their students that. And so I would do like hourly teaching day rates. And I was like, why am I doing this for other companies when I could do this myself? And that's kind of where the idea for Spark School was born.
That's incredible. And so how many students have come through your school?
Oh my God, we're almost at 5,000 students.
That's amazing. Like, how does that has to make you feel so good?
It feels so unreal because I found a Facebook memory the other month or so where I had my first workshop. I did it in my backyard. Is 20 people. And I invited, 20 people that were in LA that I knew wanted to grow their social media. I put up like an Eventbrite or something and I sold tickets for like $30. There were people emailing me like, where's the address?
Yeah.
I'm at the back of your apartment, literally was in the backyard. And we took a photo and I was like, okay, this is 20 people, but how can I do this in a larger scale where I can teach people anywhere in the world?
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. And so your husband works with you as well, correct?
Yes, he does.
How is that dynamic?
It's funny. It's definitely a learning process. It's not for all couples.
I love that honesty.
It's not. It's not. I know a lot of other women entrepreneurs who cannot work with their partners, and I totally respect that. We've found like a good dynamic. We love bouncing ideas off each other. We were in our office on Sunday because we just love what we do and we have so many things coming up. And so for us, it's something kind of like, this is our baby. Yeah.
So as a woman and a woman of color, what have been the challenges that you've faced in terms of being an entrepreneur, getting people to take you seriously as you've been building this brand over the last few years?
There's been so many challenges. Let me start with one. One, the first thing is I feel like as an Asian woman, sometimes I look a lot younger than my age. Some people think
which is a blessing.
It is. It's great
Right.
for like my face and my photos and my skincare. But when people kind of stop on my page or they find me randomly and they don't know me and haven't been following me for a while, they automatically put me in the category of like, oh, she's just a social media influencer and she just takes photos of products and looks pretty and then that's it. And then there's no regard to my 15 plus years background in business and advertising. The fact that I've actually worked in the ad agency and on the brand side. And so that's definitely something that's been a challenge. I feel like just as a woman, that already happens. And then women of color, and then like Asians in general, sometimes we don't get taken seriously. A lot of the times we don't get taken seriously because they think like, we're not going to speak out. And we're not. And also sometimes we've been taught to downplay our accomplishments and our achievements. But part of business is telling people why they should trust you and listen to what you're saying. And so sometimes it is a challenge to have to be like, well, look, this is what I've been able to do. I've been here, and by here. And like, that's conflicting sometimes with what we grew up with. Like, don't, brag and don't, put all that stuff out there.
Yeah. And so you're saying that as a cultural thing, but I think a lot of people do feel uncomfortable doing that in general. And so how do you find a balance where you are like saying, hey, I accomplished this and I'm proud of it, but it's not bragging, because there is almost a fine line. And I feel like some people struggle with, deciphering what that line is. So how have you managed to do that?
It's a day by day thing, right? Sometimes I just want to rant on my Facebook, do a live and go off because I've seen something and people, I get a comment and people are like, oh, well, this must be easy for you because of the way you look or something like that. And I want to just go off and talk about, it's not just about how you look. If it were that easy, there would be a lot more successful CEOs right now on TikTok, right? But there's a lot of strategy and business behind it that only comes with the experience of, coming from corporate and doing this for over a decade. And so Sometimes I think it's about really communicating your message in a thoughtful way. I think that's another skill that a lot of people don't have, right? Like people don't
Yeah.
really know how to communicate in a way where it doesn't sound like you're bragging, but instead coming from a place of experience and education. That's kind of how I come about it, is like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to share with you my experience and knowledge so that that could help guide you and inspire you and empower you to do it your own way.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that I've connected with you on, and I really appreciate that you speak out about this a lot, because obviously coming from the music world and being a performer, I've gotten asked to perform for free a million times. And I'm like, that's not going to pay my bills. Like put my 10,000 hours in to be a singer, to be a performer. And so I want you to pay my worth. And so I love that you have focused on that a lot, because this is the phrase that you hate. People ask to pick your brain often, right? And so so how long did it take you to get to that point where you were like, you know what, I can't do this for free anymore, and I have to know my worth? Because obviously, for me as a singer, I have done free things in the beginning when I was starting out, because you actually do want that quote unquote exposure. But there is that line you cross where you're like, okay, I'm past the exposure now. I deserve to be paid for what I've put in the work for. So when did you know that you couldn't give away free advice anymore?
I think that distinction went from when I was side hustling and I had a paycheck from another job. So, yeah, I could afford to give my time for free because I had money
Mm,
coming from somewhere else. But when I started doing this full time, then it started to get really serious about, okay, if you're not paying me, who's going to pay me? And I don't have
right.
a paycheck to fall back on. I don't have a bi-weekly thing that's guaranteed to come in. And that's where sometimes I get the pushback from a lot of people about, well, what about mentorship? I'm like, yeah, that's when you volunteer to be a mentor. That's volunteer work. That's like where
And
you're,
there's nothing wrong with that, but
yeah.
that's just not where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. And like I do have volunteer time, but like that's on my terms and who I choose to give it to, and not
Right.
everyone who DMs you on Instagram asking for a free hour of your time.
It is a fine line, because on one hand, I feel like you want to help people. You want people to be successful, but also you don't want to be taken advantage of. And that's something that I've also had to learn to kind of say, hey, no, or you're going to pay me for this, because I have given free advice. I have said, oh, this is how I got this gig. This is how I did this. This is how I accomplished this. But it is a learning process, because you also don't want to be labeled as, someone who's selfish or isn't paying it forward or giving back. But it's at the same time, it's like, I got here by doing the work, and I'm willing to help you a little bit, but then you actually have to do the work too. And if you want to pay for the advice and pay for the guidance and pay for the coaching, then these are my rates, you know?
Exactly. And as someone who gives so much free content, right? I have the podcast, I go live every week. I'm
You have master classes. Yeah. Like
everywhere.
you do actually a lot.
There's enough free resources that if you're in the information stage and you're in the research stage and you're trying to figure out how to even go about this, fine, right? And then that's where
Mhm.
you have to decide, okay, am I going to take this seriously? Just think about like school, right? There's YouTube and Google University, and then there's enrolling into a program and you actually have to pay for it. And so
Yeah.
sometimes people don't think like online school and courses and programs are the same thing, but they are. It's like
Yeah.
signifies to yourself that you're serious. You put it in your schedule because you paid for it, right? And you assign value to it because you made an investment in yourself. So the people who invested thousands of dollars in school, hopefully they went to school and did the
Yeah.
work, right? I know
Right.
people that didn't, but if this is what you really want to do, I was just talking to my brother about it because he's, playing ukulele and he's investing 20 minutes a day, and it's hard to do that when you don't have a teacher or someone like that. If you could do it on your own,
Right.
great. But 95% of us need help. And
Yeah.
that's where you decide, okay, what kind of help can you invest in right now?
So I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of the rise of influencers in the last few years. And if you feel like influencers, even if it's not within their niche, have a responsibility to talk about important issues in the world. Because I know there's this one Instagram account that talks about white female influencers and how that is the majority of type of influencers that actually are very silent on specific issues when it comes to Black Lives Matter, current Stop the Asian Hate movement that's happening. So what do you think? Do you think the influencers, when you get to a certain point, that you should use your influence positively in that way? Or if it's not your niche, do you think it's okay to just kind of back away from those things?
I believe that influencers do have a responsibility to talk about these things at any stage. And I think that the minute you begin is the minute you identify yourself as a real influence and not just an influencer who poses with products. And so, like, I think you have to go into this. My students know this. They're like, they know. They know. And that's just why I say impact-driven influencers, because I'm not here to coach people to get free products. That's not what I do. What I do is I help real people who want to build an influence for good while making the impact, while making money doing it, because income is a big part of it. We can't help people when we're stressed out about money. And so I think that if you were going into this, and this is something you're think about like, what kind of influence do you actually want to create and want to put out there? And it has to be for something bigger than the products, right? The products are great, the brands are great, and that's really a way to monetize. But what is the underlying reason? And I think that the people who are not addressing the issues that are happening come off as tone deaf, not authentic, not relating, because we're all going through this. If you haven't talked about the pandemic, Black Lives Matter, social injustice, diversity,
then what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? It's like white noise, literally.
That couldn't have been a more perfect phrase.
Literally white noise. Like, everyone's just going to tune out because it's boring and it's also not real. And like, nobody, I love photos that look great. I'm all about editorial. I have a lifestyle feed, as you can see, but if you read my captions, I talk a lot more about things that matter. And if you really want to build a business that stays for a long time, you are going to have to talk about like the real human issues and go beyond the superficial.
I completely agree. And I don't know if you saw this recent situation with an influencer. I didn't know who she was before the situation happened, but Rachel Hollis, I don't know if you're aware. I know it's, you can laugh
I didn't even know who this person was.
I didn't. It's so funny. I was like, I don't know who this woman is, but what she said was so tacky and just inappropriate. But one of the phrases that she said in this awful video that she posted was like, what about you makes me think that I want to be relatable? And I thought that that was so awful, because that is the whole reason that people follow you, is because they either see themselves in you or they see something about you that they're like, I want to be that person. And so they relate to you. That's the whole point of influence. So for her to say that, she was literally saying, I'm above everybody that's following me on my social media accounts. And if you get here, great. But if you don't, that's not my problem. So I was just curious how you reacted to that, because I just felt gross after watching that video. I don't know any other way to describe it. I was just like, ugh, ew.
So as someone who's seen her plagiarize people in the past, I've seen her talk live at one of the events I'm in. She's not new to the online marketing world. And so I've been there and I follow a lot of the industry influencers in there. And she already got in trouble for plagiarizing like a Maya Angelou quote as her own. Come on. Like,
could you pick somebody a little less famous if you're going to do that? Like, okay.
Credited. Even Canva's templates have a space for crediting the quote. Like, you just had to do that. She blamed her team again, which happened again in this scenario. And so it was sad that I wasn't shocked and I wasn't surprised, because it was just a problematic thing. And here's the thing, either she is clueless or oblivious, and her team, like, if it's you need help, there's people out there to guide you on how to go there and what to do. And like, there's lots of PR companies, that's their only job. And so for someone who's a super successful multimillionaire, billionaire, whatever, it's like, can you figure out what to do with your brand? Because if you just want to be on top of everyone. Again, like that is the whole premise of being an influencer. It's to
Right.
connect with people on a relatable level, to
Yeah.
get to gain know, like, and trust with your
Yeah.
audience. And so, she's just like, it was just a whole shit show.
Yeah. And I mean, I personally was kind of shocked, but like I said, I didn't know who she was, but I was like, why would you think that this was an okay thing to say to your millions of followers? You really don't think that you're going to get any pushback from that. It was shocking in that sense because I'm always surprised when situations happen where people put their foot in their mouth. Like we're all human, we make mistakes, but it was such a blatant, disrespectful statement to make that I don't know. I mean, that's just to me, that showed who she was, and so everything else to me now seems very, very fake and not at all the type of brand that it looked like. Because I looked back and I looked her up and looked at her feed and I was like, this isn't even at all what you're advertising or how you're acting or what you're pushing. So I think this video is actually who you really are. So I don't believe anything you say now.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't even that. It was like the apology afterwards and then calling out women of color, especially Black women afterwards.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and then they were like, why are you tagging me? Don't involve me in your mess of an apology.
Like, keep my name out your mouth, please. I don't even know. I don't want to waste too much time on her, but I was curious because you've been in that world and now I know that you've even known her for a long time and you've seen her speak. So it was an interesting situation and I'm curious to see how she will recover from that. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be people that still follow her.
Yeah, and I think we're coming to a time where people are now watching and people are observing who is speaking up, who is standing
Yes.
up for others, who is, willing to use their platform for good. And
Yeah.
as the consumers, as the audience, we get to decide who we're going to give our attention to, our platforms to, who we're going to support, right? And
Yeah.
who we're going to
Yeah.
give our money to as well.
Yeah. And that's what I love the power of social media in that sense. Like it can really spark someone's career, pun intended with the Spark School.
Yeah.
But it can because when you see people that love and you love what they're doing, it's just going to grow your influence even more. So now I want to talk a little bit about some of the current issues that have been happening, and I know that you haven't shied away from talking about issues on your platform, which I really appreciate. But we've seen a rise in hate towards the Asian community. But from your vantage point, because I know I can speak obviously as a Black woman, when Black Lives Matter started getting a lot of traction, a lot of Black people were like, well, we've been saying this stuff for years. Like, you guys are just now listening. So, from your vantage point, do you think that there has already been a lot of situations with hate and prejudice towards the Asian community, but it's just now getting attention? Or do you think this is kind of a new situation that's happening because
Oh,
of, all the coronavirus stuff?
it's been happening. And
Okay.
yes, I think that it was amplified because of the coronavirus. But, we were teased way back
Yeah.
30 something years ago, like a lot of immigrants, the language and then how we look. And everyone always like is wondering what kind of Asian you are. There were so many sketches on what are you? And people are like,
Yeah.
American? Where are you from? And one kid's like, Irvine.
Right.
And so,
You're like down the street. That's where I'm from. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And then, like,
Yeah.
but were you born here? And like all of those questions. And the
Yeah.
sad thing is, it has existed. And the happy thing, which I think the good is coming out, is that it is coming out. Like social
Right.
media and the internet and technology has now enabled us to see it more, and that it's now
Yeah.
top of mind. And so, as much as it's a bad thing that people are seeing more of it, I think it's a good thing that it's being brought to light and that more people can get involved if they want to. And also,
Mhm.
I feel like it's good to have that attention so that we have the chance to do something about it.
How would you suggest to someone that hasn't spoken out about a social justice issue, but they want to start? They want to start talking about the hate in the Asian community. They want to start talking about Black Lives Matter, and their niche has not even addressed this whatsoever. Like, what would your advice be to them on just that first post to make?
That's a really good question. And so I like to be thoughtful about it. And so sometimes you're super angry and you're emotionally charged. And sometimes people are just like, I'm just going to go live and go for it. I'm a little bit more like, okay, take a breath,
Right.
10 deep breaths, 5-minute meditation, and then I would kind of write it out. I'm a writer. I write everything out first, even before I go live, even before I do record an episode or a video. So I would just write down your thoughts and feelings. Sometimes too, like when you're ranting, you're kind of all over the place.
Right.
And I feel like people just process information better when it's kind of done in a process, there's a story, right? There's what happened, how did you feel about it, and then what are you going to do about it now, like the 3 steps, kind of like the arc of the story. And then here's what I learned, and here's what you could do. Here are some links and resources if you want to do something about it. So that's kind of how I like to process my thoughts. Like, this is what happened, I saw it, I felt this way, it reminded me of this. And I would share definitely personally. And I try also not to say like, you should go do this or this should happen. And like, cause you can't control everyone. You can only control yourself, share what you're feeling, and not try to put words into other people's mouths. So I like to be very intentional about that. And then I say like, I invite you to do this, or if you feel called to do this, then here are some ways you can help if you want to.
I think that's great advice. And yeah, I feel like I've had a lot of people say like, I want to say something, I just don't know what to say. And I say that. Say, I don't know what to say in this moment, but I don't want to be silent anymore. And I said, that's enough to just get the conversation started. But we can't be afraid to talk about these things, because the more silent you are, you're actually complicit in the situations that are happening. So even if you say, I don't know what to say in this moment, but I'm sick of seeing this happen, that's enough.
I totally agree with you. I feel like it's worse if you stay silent, because also as an influencer, people look to you as a leader. People look to you as inspiration. And so when things are going on in the world, they're wondering if you're going to say something about it, especially if you're in their feed, every day or consistently. And when you don't say something about it, I feel like you're just brushing it off and you're not in touch with what's going on. And it does come off at like standoffish or tone deaf.
I mean, I always joke with my husband when I see like certain situations, like you'll see maybe like 20 people posting about it. And then somebody's like a photo of their dog. And I'm like, are you just not aware of what's happening? Are you just choosing to ignore it, And I get it, but I don't care about your dog right now. I want to know that you're focusing on what's on people being hurt, people being killed, people being, just the injustice that's happening. Like, I need to know that you are focused, not just on your dog or whatever product you got to deal with. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm glad we're in agreement in that sense. So do you feel that, because I've thought this for a very long time, I feel like there's sometimes this competition almost between marginalized groups. And I'm always like, you guys, if we just would all come together with all of these situations, we would probably make a lot more progress. I do think that everybody has their own injustices. We have, the Asian community, what's going on with them, the Black community, Native Americans, the Latin community. But I do feel like there needs to be some sort of like coalition of all these marginalized groups coming together so that we can make progress.
I definitely agree. I feel like sometimes when the whole Asian hate stuff started coming out, people are like, what about Black Lives Matter? And we're like, we didn't forget about it. It's still there. It's just, this is the news cycle right now. And this is what happened. It doesn't like lessen, what is going on in all the other communities, because there's always something going on. But I think like, it's like, for me, it's like, I just choose one message a day because like doing so many things, like I don't mind retweeting multiple things, but for my own, I post once a day. So we choose what to post that day. And it's also, I feel like sometimes when we want to be involved, we get so into it that we start to feel overwhelmed, and there's just
Yeah.
so many messages. And sometimes I've had to tell myself to back off, or like to give my phone a break and to not be glued to CNN, especially with the Derek Chauvin trial going on right now here in Minneapolis. Like, I could
Hmm.
probably have the news on all day, but I would not be able to work.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And it's also emotionally draining. I haven't even personally watched much of the trial because it's like, I just don't want to relive the situation. I don't. I just want to hear what the verdict is so that we can figure out how to move past this. And I even told people, I was like, you don't need to watch trial if you don't want to. You don't have to. Don't do it to yourself. Focus on your mental health in these types of situations. You don't want to relive that. So I'm definitely with you on that.
Yeah, it's really tough to find that balance, because it's like you want to know what's going on and you want to, see what's happening, what people are saying, but it is, like you said, emotionally draining. And so you also have to protect your energy,
Yeah.
and, be able to function in the way that you want to show up for your audience.
So, Gwen, as an influencer and a teacher, what do you feel? And I know it's going to be hard to come up with one thing, but what is one of the most important things for you that you want to share with people that look to you for advice or come to you for guidance in any way?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Something that I've been working on recently is my brand. And this is something that I have my students, as you know, work on really, really early on. But
Yeah.
what you may not know yet, that is something you can currently work on all the time. And it's because it's evolving with you as a person.
Yeah.
And, I've just started to redo all of my brand messaging, and we want to be more vocal about, women empowerment, female entrepreneurship, equality in influencer marketing and in business in general. We put social justice as one of my content pillars. It's no longer, oh, we talk about it when it's in the news or when it comes up. It's like, no, it has to be something that
An active
they
topic.
land on my page and they know that I have something to say about that. And it doesn't have to be complicated, right? It could be a story
Yeah.
highlight. Like, you
Right.
have one
Right.
story highlight. Some people, they think like, oh, it's my business and I have to be all business and I have to be sales. It's like, part of the reason why people choose you as a business is because of what you do, what are your impact goals. And so I want people to know, like, whoever you choose to learn from, whoever you choose as your coach, just know that this is part of my company and this is why I do what I do. And diversity is a priority for us. We are you saw 90% women of color community, and that's super important to us. But people won't know that unless you tell them and you make it a
Yeah.
priority in your branding and your messaging. And so I would invite you, if you're thinking about, your own brand or your business, that your personal values are intertwined with that. It's no longer like it's just your business channel. No, business is personal. I tweeted something about this the other day. I was like, business is personal and people choose to give their money where their values are aligned. But if you don't share your values and communicate that, they're never going to know.
Amen. Sound advice. Well, Gwen, it was just wonderful chatting with you and catching up a little bit. Let everyone know where they can follow you. And if they're interested in being a part of the Spark School, how can they get involved with that?
Yeah, sure. You can go to my website at gwenlane.com, and you can find me on Instagram at HeyGwenLane, and you can find links all around there for the Spark School.
Please follow her. I promise you will learn so much, even just from her Instagram and her tweets. Well, thank you so much again for chatting with me, Gwen. And to the listeners, thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to We Need to Talk, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye.